Welcome, everybody. New song. Listen to the words. Come on in. The water's fine.
World is spinning like it's ending, but what if it's the beginning, the first inning of a whole new game? Oh, and the life we're living is a gift that we've been given. What if we could all be winning, if we all just played differently? We are enveloped by a love that wants us.
Welcome, everybody. All together now. Welcome to Legendary Life. Listen. Yes. Let the love in. The media is feeding us a polarizing, hypnotizing bunch of lies, marginalizing, but you and I can see. And that's what we're here to do today, is to see differently. Just checking to see who's here with us and make sure we can see the comments. Yes, so welcome everybody. Derek Rydall here. Welcome to Legendary Life and this episode of News from the Real World, where we are decoding what's really happening behind the headlines, behind the scene, SEEN, because the appearance of this world is not the real world. It's not even close. And I am Derek Rydall. I'm a human evolution coach, author of Emergence, A Whole New Human, brand new, out wherever fine books are sold. Get a copy of that. Go to derekrydall.com, put in your information in the book page, and you're going to get a free evolutionary coach AI that I created to help you future-proof your life, your work, your wealth, and your well-being in this age. And this show, it's designed to stand at a place where almost nobody else does. It's not merely news, which is too shallow and often designed to hijack your limbic system and make you scared and afraid and buy more, more drugs, pharmaceuticals, and things you don't really need. It's not just spirituality, which often avoids the news. And it's not just self-help, which too often becomes self-indulgence. But it's the convergence of all three. We take what's happening out there and we read it as a mirror. Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage and men and women are but players upon it. It's a story, but like a great play, Shakespeare also said, it holds up a mirror to us, a mirror of what's trying to emerge in the world and in you. Now, just again, quick housekeeping. This is live. This is an experiment, and it gets better the more you show up. Bring your loved ones, bring your friends, let people know who are stuck in doom scrolling and reading the news and being triggered and thinking it's all happening out there and that their victims are helpless or powerless to it. We have to change the narrative, not by trying first to go out there and change it, but by reinterpreting it. Again, like a great play, a great story, there's a deeper author intent. There's something deeper trying to be revealed. Even in all the drama, Shakespeare is full of people fighting and killing and dying and having sex with their mother and who knows what, but it's actually revealing a deeper truth that is transformational. So if you resonate with that, if you want to be able to reclaim your power, your agency, your capacity to read between the lines of what's really going on so that you have more power, more wisdom to move forward in your life, hit like and subscribe. Do that now so that you can get notified. If you're part of my community, I won't be emailing you and letting you know about this all the time. I'm just doing that initially. So subscribe and tell me in the chat right now where you're from, where you're watching from, and post that in there. And also why you're here. What brought you here? Maybe you just stumbled on by and saw this crazy guy singing into a mic and are like, what's going on here? But let me know where you're coming from and why you're here. Now, before we get into the meat of today about money does not equal wealth and about this headline of what we're going to talk about today, I want to just catch up anybody that's new and remind the rest of you what we're actually doing here, because it matters and you have to hear this more than once. The premise of this show is that the headline level is never the real story out in the world and even in your own life, right? You know, Bob cheated on me, or Susie is mean to me, or my kids are struggling, or whatever the issue is. It's not the real issue. The headline is the fruit. The real story is the root. And if you only ever react to the fruit, you stay a victim of the weather. Some days the tree gives you a nice apple and you're happy, right? Some days it just drops it on your head and you're a victim. But either way, you're just standing under the tree getting hit by the weather and by whatever falls, right? So we don't want to do that. What we do here is we learn to read things more and more at the root. And that starts with understanding a word I've been talking about lately, which is apocalypse. We are in an apocalypse. And apocalypse doesn't mean the end of the world. It comes from the Greek word apocalypsis, which means the unveiling or the uncovering. Apocalypse means that which has been hidden is being revealed. And we're in that age right now, the age of unveiling, the age of revealing, right? Epstein, Disclosure Day. In fact, I'm going to see the movie tonight, Spielberg's new movie. You know, the aliens are among us, Epstein, everybody's up to shenanigans, and what used to be hidden is increasingly being revealed. So that's right on time. It's also what's called the fourth turning. And so when the world or your world seems like it's falling apart, a better way, a more constructive way is to begin to see it as if something is being revealed so that it can fall together in a new way, so that it can be reborn. First, when the lid comes off, that's literally what it means again, the apocalypse. The lid has come off and what's hidden is revealed. There might be demons coming out, but they've been sitting on top of some angels, and the angels do eventually come out. But it's happening to like a fever that's releasing the toxins so that we can get back to who and what we really are and what's really trying to emerge. Now, we've spent the last couple episodes building this framework, building this lens of how to begin to see the world and interpret the world and interpret our own life. And in episode 1, we talked about how the world is this mirror, even at a civilizational scale. And we went deeper into understanding there's really only one thing going on. We're even discovering this now in neuroscience and some of the cutting edge physics, quantum physics, that there really is one unified something, and that there is deeper patterns of potential that are seeking to emerge. And we talked about that in the first episode. If you haven't seen it, go check it out, because there's a lot of layers to this that I really want you to understand. And it's not something you just listen to like eating a bag of chips and you get full for a minute, but they're empty calories. If you watch the first couple episodes, really understand this framework, it will be of value to you and return on that value for the rest of your life, in terms of your ability to read the stories in the world and in your life and to become empowered by them. In episode 2, we talked about how history isn't random. Evolution isn't random. It's not just one damn thing after another. It's not just accidental things smashing into each other and we'll see what happens. It's actually a process by which life is always seeking the next best condition for a hidden pattern to emerge. And that's where the law of emergence comes from. And again, you want to watch that so you can understand more deeply that everything is conspiring to create the next best condition for some potential to emerge. That's what's going on. Life is for you, but you have to be able to see what is the deeper pattern. So you're not just billiard balls smashing into each other or what one of my mentors, Michael Beckwith, calls the friction of the fictions, and you're stuck in the story level and you don't understand there is a deeper theme that's trying to emerge in the story of your life and in the story of our world. But today we're going to not just talk about the lenses and build the lenses for seeing, we're going to use it more specifically. And we're going to take what is probably one of the biggest, most significant headlines on the planet right now, and we're going to decode that. Now, this is what I like to call the apocalypse report. Imagine a little, some kind of lid coming off the planet and demons and angels escaping. I don't know. I haven't come up with an image for that yet. But basically, last week, for the first time in history, one person crossed a number we used to think was impossible. And that's Elon Musk. He became the world's first trillionaire. Yes, trillionaire. That's $1,000 billion, right? You aren't going to find that change in your couch pillows. That's, of course, SpaceX went public, and his net worth hit something around, I don't know, 1 point something trillion. It's over that now. So, but let me make this number a little more real, because the number is so big, it gets goofy. It just kind of makes you go numb. And this is increasingly happening. Multi-trillion-dollar companies used to be, again, a fairy tale. And now we have a trillionaire. One man now holds more wealth than the bottom. Hear this. One man now holds more wealth than the bottom 46% of the entire human race, not just of America. One dude holds more wealth than almost half of the entire human race. The planet. That's roughly 3.8 billion people on one side of the scale, and Mr. Musk on the other. And here's the one that also broke my brain. The average American is now closer in net worth to Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, who's worth over $100 billion, maybe even over 200 billion. I don't know his number right now. The average American is closer in net worth to Jeff Bezos than Jeff Bezos is to Elon Musk. The second richest man alive, that's Jeff, is closer to you than he is to number one. These numbers get goofy. And this lands also in a very particular moment. This is why I want you to understand that none of this is accidental. It's a moment where a whole generation can't even afford a house, where young people are increasingly scared and angry that AI is going to take their job before they can even get it. I was at one of those college commencement speeches with Eric Schmidt, previous CEO of Google, who got booed, and it was all over the news because he was talking about AI, what a great thing it is. And it is, and it isn't. We won't maybe go down that rabbit hole today, but a whole generation is booing it. They're angry. They can't afford. They're working multiple gigs, side gigs, the gig economy to pay their bills, and they can barely afford rent, and they can't afford to own anything. Like the old state, not that old, recently, you will own nothing and be happy about it. And at the same time, where capitalism's approval has hit a record low, barely half the country, and among people under 35, only about 43% see it favorably. And where now more than 6 in 10 young Americans and not just Americans, but I'm speaking of America for a reason, they now say they look more favorably on socialism, a form of government, and this is facts, look it up, a form of government that is responsible for more murder than any other in modern history. The murders perpetuated by socialism, Mao, Stalin, it makes Hitler look like he was just having a bad day. I know that's controversial, that's edgy, and I'm not always here to comfort the afflicted, but to afflict the comfortable. And again, don't take my word, research it. Tens of millions, tens and tens of millions murdered under Stalin and Mao because of the underlying principles of socialism. Now, that's not to say that capitalism is the best framework or the best way, right? And by the way, we don't even have capitalism in the West. We have crony capitalism. But as it's been said, it's the best worst solution. It's the worst out of everyone except, it's the best except for the whatever that saying is. It's basically the best worst solution so far. And its time for a radical change is also up as well, as we'll see. And this is the most important thing, because this is not going to be a debate or a political punditry where I'm just speaking up the positives of one side versus the other. In fact, that's part of the problem. This isn't about capitalism versus socialism. And I want you to notice as I'm talking, it's really important, as we'll get to later, what is this bringing up in you? What is it triggering in you? Share in the chat. In fact, let me just see what, yes, like, so for example, Miss Janetti, and we'll get to this again. I don't want this to become a debate, but please share your honest feelings as long as it's constructive. Don't just attack and troll. Seek to make a real case. One of the things we'll discover as we go through this journey, not just today, but in the future, is you're going to disagree with stuff that I say, and that's great. I don't have all the answers. In fact, the more I know I don't know almost anything. But I want you to develop your capacity for seeing and reading the deeper truth, for you to have more agency and more empowerment. Notice when you're triggered. We're going to talk later what I call becoming trigger happy. Or notice when you're certain and you disagree, but do your best to make an actual case for your perspective. This will help you to understand what is underneath it, because we all live from a frame of reference. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. We see our story made up of our beliefs and concepts of the world. Okay? So we do not see reality. We are the blind men and women holding parts of the elephant and proclaiming it's a tree trunk, it's a rope, it's this, it's that. We're all wrong, and we're even more wrong because we don't see the bigger picture. But together, we can begin to home in on more and more of what's true, okay? And once you begin to see what's true, you will begin to see it across all dimensions, science, physics, spirituality, religion, etc. You'll see these unifying and repeating principles. But just to say real quickly, again, so I don't want to get down in a political debate, and I'm not saying that capitalism hasn't also murdered people, right? It hasn't caused lots of death and destruction. However, if you look at the actual, and this is where you might have to do some research, right? You might have to do some research if you want to actually shift your perspective, especially where you're certain. And you might go, hey, I found more research and it turns out I am right. That's fine. But be careful where you're living at the headline level. People read a headline and they start trolling or attacking or posting their reaction to the headline before they even know the whole story. And we do that in our life. This is the big point here, right? Oh, capitalism has murdered more people. Okay, so do the research and you might be surprised to discover, even as I have been, where the numbers really are and where they really fall. This doesn't make anybody right or wrong. We want to become more interested in the truth than in being right. If you're more interested in being right and making somebody wrong, you are as far away from the truth as you can get. But if you're more interested in knowing the truth, even and especially if it means you end up being wrong, now you're onto something, right? As Jesus said, if you try to save your life, you'll lose it. Another way to say it is if you try to hold on to your opinions and your perspectives, you're going to stagnate, you're going to be stuck, you're going to be blind. And they say in science, science only progresses one funeral at a time, right? Because nobody lets go of their hypotheses until they die. We don't want to do that. We want to be more committed to the truth. The truth will set you free, but at first it'll piss you off, it'll scare the crap out of you, and it'll annihilate parts of you. But then you'll be free, right? So truth and freedom are not namby-pamby Pollyanna things. They are the most destructive of the things that have been holding us captive. But many of the things, the perceptions, the opinions, the stories, the beliefs that are holding us captive, we think they're keeping us safe. We think they're keeping us in control. We think we've identified them as the thing that matters most. And that's what leads to the conflict and the war and the murder and the lack and the limitation. It is us holding on to a perspective that is either broken or is outdated. And that didn't happen in history. That's happening right now in your life. And this is meant to bust that. Okay? So again, we could get into more debate, and maybe at some of these episodes we will, or maybe later on we will, about some more of the permutations on some of these ideas. But keep posting what this is bringing up for you. So we want to go beneath the headline, right? So, and like, this is how it looks. One side is screaming about, Elon and everything that's going on. It's theft. The system is rigged. Eat the rich, off with their head, Marie Antoinette style, burn it down. And the other side is screaming, he's a genius. This is genius. This is the free market at work. Leave it alone. You're just jealous. It's just Cain and Abel all over again. And then there's a third group, maybe the biggest increasingly, who's just freaking exhausted, who's just checking out, who's going numb, quietly numb, comfortably numb, Pink Floyd, The Wall. And they're just pulling the blanket over their head, Netflixing and chilling, ordering some Grubhub, right? And right here, this is where almost everybody goes wrong, including, by the way, most pundits and politicians. They jump right to what we should do about it, or right to an opinion about it. And they instantly pick a side, pick a team, grab a torch or grab a shield. And that reflex, that need to immediately know whose fault it is and to immediately stand on what you believe is right and whose side you're on, that feels like conviction. As I said, it feels even good, better to be pissed off than to feel apathetic or anxious or depressed. And by the way, the algorithms know that, and they hijack that. It even feels like clarity. You have energy in your body, but actually it's just survival. It's the oldest circuit in the body, and it's when a threat shows up and the nervous system says, find the tribe, name the enemy, fight, or run and hide. Fight, flight, or fawn. What is it? Fight, flight, fawn. There's one other one, I think. So tribalism has kept us alive for 100,000 years, but survival is not the same as the truth. So it doesn't say you shall survive and be free. It says you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Survival will never lead you to the truth, and survival will never lead you to sustainable evolution or progress. Especially, you need to first survive, but we are stuck in a survival circuit. And the fight reflex has never once in history produced wisdom, other than the fact that we fight and we kill and we burn it down. And then in the ashes, we go, maybe there's a better way. And we develop the beginning of wisdom. We don't want to wait for the ashes to start gaining wisdom, right? That system produces winners and losers and unsustainable systems that must continually have another war to break it and start again. It produces people in the street and blood in the streets, and we're on the verge of that in many ways. We're seeing it. So on this show, we do the hardest thing there is, which is don't jump to an opinion. You can have an opinion, you can share it, but hold it lightly, right? What you think is not true. What you feel just tells you what you think. What you think and believe is your best guess at reality. And as we've been talking about in the last several episodes, it's distorted at best and potentially completely wrong, coming from a wound. That's not judgment, that's wisdom. That's the beginning of wisdom. So we don't just jump to who's right, who's wrong. And we also don't just jump to, we got to do something, or I got to do something. We slow down. We stay in the question one beat longer than is comfortable. And we ask, what is this revealing about the world, about this area of the world, about me? As I like to say, the question is the quest you're on. As I also like to say, kids are young and healthy and happy, and adults are sick and miserable and old because kids have only questions and adults have only answers. So what's being revealed is not merely, or at all even potentially, that capitalism is evil or that billionaires are geniuses who deserve to have their name on every building. It's not either of those things. Again, I don't want to go all the way down the rabbit hole, but there's a reason why that allegory of Adam and Eve in the garden, eating of the knowledge of good and evil, and then suddenly putting fig leaves over their private parts, and God saying to them, who told you you were naked? And then they eat of the fruit and they fall asleep. And in Genesis, there's nowhere it says they woke up. They fell into history. They fell into his story, the Adamic dream, where now they must name everything and they must now determine good and evil. And so this world is a mental creation that we are projecting onto quantum fields fluctuations. We won't go there either. I talked about that in a previous episode. And it's all built on this binary good and evil, right and wrong. And we think if I just get enough of the good and get rid of enough of the evil, I'll finally be free. But Buddha came along and said, no, not so fast. Desire is the root of all suffering. And when he meant desire is craving and aversion, meaning that craving for more and more of the good and that aversion to more and more of the bad is the very thing that makes up our false egoic self and keeps us in a never-ending karmic loop of birth and death and survival and conflict and struggling and suffering. So at the deepest root, everything that's happening is trying to break us out of that pattern. And so this is not an argument. We're not, by the end of this talk, we're not going to ultimately go, so Elon's the bad guy? Or wait, Elon's the good guy? I don't know. Who's the good guy, Derek? Who's the bad guy? That's for the movies, right? That's not for real life. What's being revealed here is closer to the idea that the container that is holding things is too small. Our concept of economics, our concept of ourselves and the world and our roles in it, the whole framework, our concept of money, of wealth, of work, of capitalism, of capital, capitalist versus socialist, it's cracking because life has outgrown it. And you look at the data again, young people aren't actually rushing. If you look at the data, it's not just that young people are rushing to embrace socialism as the system. The deeper polling shows that they're walking away from all the old stuff. When they say socialism, a lot of them just mean, I want it to be fair. I want a shot. I want a home, right? They're not voting for a system, except that's all they have an option of. They only have option, vote socialism or capitalism, because they're not watching this show and understanding they have a deeper option. But they're sending a signal. And the signal is, this box is too small for what's trying to be born. We all need what my mentor, Michael Beckwith, says, the small box vaccination. We're stuck in a small box, right? The chaos, the chronic problems we're experiencing are a signal we're trying to survive in a box, in a concept, in a model of the world that is too small. You understand? That's what Armageddon is. Armageddon is the breaking and the shattering, not of the world, but of our world models. Okay, it's not the actual meteor hitting the planet, and it's not the end of money and economies. It's the end of our concepts of money and wealth. That's what's trying to emerge, is a bigger concept of wealth and abundance and freedom and justice. As Jesus said, you can't put new wine in old wineskins. And as I said earlier, if you try to save your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life, you'll find it. Some of you may know, a few years ago, I lost a child, my son, the love of my life. And I cried for 3 years straight, every day, didn't miss a day. And one day I was walking, and all of a sudden I was in grief, and this voice emerged, and it said, "When the form that held your love shatters, the love is not lost, it is liberated." And my whole being, I began to shake with tears and laughter, sobs and laughter, as this love was liberated within me. I'm getting chills now, even recalling it. And it just kept expanding until I was like holding onto a tree, shaking, laughing, crying. And the love got bigger and bigger and bigger until it wasn't just the love of a father for a son, these two separate seeming entities. It was the love of father and son. It was archetypal. It was universal. It was boundless. And as hard as that experience was, and I still grieve, it cracked me open and allowed me to begin to access a love that increasingly has no bounds. To be able to love and have compassion and empathy for everybody. Like at a level I didn't know was possible. I mean, I knew it theoretically. To truly care, to realize truly the greatest purpose is to love. And so that shattering of that model, that framework, that box, that form, as painful and devastating as it was, has increasingly been a portal into an unlimited capacity of love, compassion, forgiveness, empathy. Now, I'm not saying we all have to go through tragedy to experience that, but you're all having some experience of boxes shattering, of concept shattering, or trying to shatter. Like, if I kept holding on, it's wrong. How could you? It never should have happened. This is terrible. This is the worst. I'm broken forever. Versus what I allowed it to become. Which one do you think would have been better? Seems pretty obvious, right? And the same thing is true when we lose our job, we get fired, we get rejected, we get abandoned. When we look out at the world and it's so unfair and so unjust, and the economy is imbalanced, and one guy has more money than half the world almost. But something's trying to break, something's trying to shatter, but not so that it tears it down, not so that one person gets to be right and one gets to be wrong. That's ego. That's the character inside the story. But the author's bigger intent is that there's a much bigger reality to wealth and abundance and prosperity for all. You get it? Post in the chat if you're getting this, and I will get to your chats and questions and stuff. So while the world looks like it's shattering and falling apart, what's really trying to happen, but it needs us to see what's there emerging. It needed me to see this bigger love. It's not going to force me unless it brings me to my knees, and just, through tragedy and crisis, often it can crack you open. But I'm imposing this question even to you right now. The real question isn't capitalism versus socialism, Elon Musk versus the rest of us. It's what's trying to emerge that neither of those boxes, capitalism, socialism, communism, and totalitarianism is really a way to name the most extreme versions of those things. And what's trying to emerge that none of those boxes can hold? And post that in the chat. Think about that. Now, I want to drop in a little bit and explore with you and share with you what I see and invite you to see that in this world where it's getting harder to afford things, where many people are struggling and wanting to tear it down and go into an old box that will only make it worse. Crony capitalism and the corrupt oligarchic nature of things right now in the West, that's only going to make it worse. It's going to cause the other side to polarize even more and eventually burn it down. But the other side of socialism, that's only going to make it worse too. There's something else. These are just boxes, but there's something bigger trying to emerge. And so we have to first begin to look at the concepts within the story, because within each story, concepts have become defined. Like, what is money? What is wealth? If you don't question what is money and what is wealth, you can never get free of the story of money and wealth as it's currently playing out. You'll just keep trying to double down or eventually give up inside of a very limited story of money and wealth and economies and a very limited concept of money and wealth. But money and wealth are not the same thing. Money is at best the fruit. Wealth is the tree. Money is income. Wealth is assets. Now, if I show you an apple tree heavy with fruit and I ask, where is the wealth of this tree? Most people would point at the apples. Give me some apples, man. The more apples I have, the better. But the apples aren't the wealth. The apples are a symbol of the wealth of the tree. It's the money the asset has produced, but it's not the wealth. That's why when the fruit is gone, the farmer doesn't cut the tree down and say, I'm broke. And that's why I say to you guys, when your bank account doesn't have any dollars in it, or it has few, or you lose your job, don't fall prey to going, well, I'm broke. You're not producing fruit right now. We'll get to why that is and how to do it, but you're not broke. You still have as much wealth as you ever had. You just don't know what wealth really is. You just don't know the source of money in abundance. But that farmer knows if she nurtures the roots in due season, she'll have another harvest of fruits. The actual wealth is the tree and its capacity to generate value. Its capacity to take in sunlight and soil and water and generate the fruit season after season after season. And then even within every seed of those apples is another tree and another tree and another tree. There is a trillionaire inside that apple seed, okay? If you strip every apple off that tree tonight, by next fall, it's covered again. Is it fall? Is that when it comes? Whatever. But because the wealth, or is it spring? Anyways, I'm not a farmer, so because the wealth was never in the fruit. Now, the potential for wealth is there if you plant it. You understand? If you take $1, which is just fruit, and you plant $1, invest it, put it into yourself, now it's building another tree. It's building an asset. But the wealth isn't in the fruit. It's the capacity to produce it. And that's what I call awakened wealth. It's an awakened, more expanded understanding of it. Now, as far as humans are concerned, right? Wealth is not the dollars or anything out there. Wealth is the capacity of you to generate from within ideas, energy, and action that have value to you and others. Now, if you have $1 and you understand your capacity to generate, you can invest that dollar. This is, by the way, also what the parable of the talents is in the Bible, where the master gives each servant a certain number of talents, which is gold, which is interesting. And they have to go out and use it. And the first guy goes out and, in the market and wheels and deals and invests and buys some, I forget exactly what he did, but he doubles or triples what he has. Second guy does the same, doubles it or triples it. The third guy takes what he's got and he just buries it for safekeeping. He doesn't do anything with it. He believes that gold is the wealth. So he hoards it. He holds on to it. He doesn't want to lose it. And when he goes back to the master and each guy says, hey, here's what I got. Here's what you gave me, but now I doubled it or tripled it. Here's what you gave me, but look at, I used it. I invested it. I circulated it. There's more. And the third guy goes, and each of them gets to keep part of the profits and gets a seat in the kingdom. And the third guy's like, I wanted to make sure I didn't want to lose anything, so I buried it. And the master's like, evil, terrible servant. He takes everything the servant has from him and kicks him out of the kingdom. And it says, to he who has, more shall be given and it shall be multiplied. And to he who has not, what he has, even what he has, will be taken away. But it's a statement about the consciousness of knowing I am the source, not the gold. It's how I use what I've been given. Do I hoard it? Do I hold it? Do I fear it? Do I fear it getting taken away? If I do, I lose. I don't not only lose the potential and the opportunity, I lose the base. I lose everything. Think about that. So real abundance is not actually about how much comes to you, right? They were all given the same amount of gold. Real abundance is measured by how much can be generated through you and from you. And I didn't say just money, right? That's why Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. Not get it, not demand it, not wait for it. Become the source, right? In The Wizard of Oz, we're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, because. Be cause. Don't be at the effect. You understand? That's a hidden code. That's why he says to the lion, you always had a heart. You always had a courage. You don't need to come to me. Says to the scarecrow, you always had a heart. You didn't need to come to me. Dorothy, you could always get home. You didn't need to come to me. You need to be the cause. You need to realize you're the source. You need to be the change you're waiting to see. It's why King Solomon, the richest man of his age, said, in all thy getting, get understanding. Right? Chase the capacity, not the coin. Because the accumulation of wisdom, knowledge, skill, and character is the truest form of wealth that no market can ever crash. No government can ever confiscate. Even Warren Buffett said that, the richest investor ever. He understood it. These guys, gals, they actually understand this. Even if you hate them, you want to see what is the principle at work behind their wealth and success. No thief can break in and steal. This is why it says again in the Bible, lay not up your treasure on earth where moth and rust will corrupt and thieves will break in and steal, but lay up your treasure in heaven where moth and rust cannot corrupt and thieves cannot break in and steal. Heaven means ever expanding good. Heaven is a state of ever expanding consciousness. That's where you want to lay up your treasure. That's where the gold is. That's where the bank account is, or the trust account. See, they're all saying the same thing across domains, dimensions, philosophies, religions. This is how you know you're beginning to see the real story behind the headline. You are the asset. What you build up and you become, nobody can steal. You are the goose that lays the golden egg. Most people spend their whole life chasing eggs, but you are here because you want to build the goose yourself, right? Now, I'll say something that may be controversial and dangerous to some of you, and it could be clipped and, say in the wrong way. But if you hold this definition honestly, what I'm saying, now you can look back and admit something. For some of you, this may not be uncomfortable, but for some of you, it is going to be uncomfortable. I know for my kid, it would be very triggering to say this to him. And that is that the fortune that Musk has developed, in large part, and give me a moment to explain further for some of you that are triggered by this, is the outer fruit of an enormous inner capacity that he built. The knowledge, the skill, the relentlessness, the ability to take an idea and organize thousands of people and billions of dollars of risk into a rocket that not only takes off, but lands itself. Willing to sleep in the office, willing to take everything he'd earned from the last job and pour it all into the next one, even if he loses every penny and has to sleep on a friend's couch, which he actually had to. Again, I'm not saying politically anything about him. I'm talking about a principle. And that's true with Jeff Bezos. That's true with Warren Buffett, the wealthiest people, the most successful. And it doesn't have to just be about money. The most successful, Taylor Swift, even before she was a billionaire, the greatest athletes, these individuals and their capacity to develop wealth and success isn't unfair. It's the outcome, the fruitage of developing a capacity. That's why you want to read biographies. You want to study where they really came from. Now, yes, some of them were born on second or third base. And that becomes another story. Well, yeah, that's easy for them to develop themselves. They actually had money and running water and electricity. But there's also plenty of examples of people that didn't have that either. And they built themselves a fortune, whether it was a fortune in money, in talent, in success, in family, in whatever. They built a wealthy and abundant life, starting with dirt as their floor. And so this is the ultimate truth behind all of this. Denying it, wanting to go, yeah, but, you can find all kinds of flaws at certain levels of the headline in this story of what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, that framework will hurt you and hurt your loved ones and hurt society. Denying it doesn't make you righteous. It makes you blind to a principle that you could be using in your own life. And I understand it's not the whole story, right? Because we don't live in a truly free market. We do not have honest capitalism. We have a system where money becomes power, power rewrites the rules, and the rewritten rules make sure that the more you have, the easier it is to get more. So you can understand both sides. The game is genuinely rigged. There are real injustices baked into the current story, the tax structures, politics, access, leverage that funnels more to those who already have. I'm not naive to that, and you don't need to be either. And if you're angry about that, you're not crazy to be angry about that. Something is being violated. You're awake to something. This is part of the apocalypse. We can see now the corruption. We can see a president for the first time in history making billions through the White House. Whether you like Trump or not, that is corruption. We can see Elon probably buying the presidency with hundreds of millions of dollars because of dark money deals. That is corruption. So I'm not naive. And it's happening on both sides of the aisle. Nancy Pelosi is one of the best investors in history. Why? Because she got all the insider trading and they made it legal for Congress people to trade. That's corruption. Okay. So everybody's corrupt. There's all kinds of corruption. That's still headline level, but we don't have to be naive. If somebody cheats on you, you don't go, well, the bigger truth is. You're like, yo, dude, what the actual, you know what? So we're not sticking our head in the sand. We're not becoming Pollyanna. But the universal principle, but if you get stuck at that headline, he did me wrong, she did me wrong, they're corrupt, they're evil, you're stuck. You're stuck in the polarity again. You're missing the principle, right? Even if there's a lot of unfair stuff, it is undeniable that one of the reasons Elon Musk is the first trillionaire, one of the reasons, there's many others, also inflation, which inflates the values of assets because of money printing, a whole other story, but is because he developed something that people wanted, that people valued, and he made tremendous sacrifices along the way to do it. He developed capacity. Now, maybe he would only be a billionaire if there wasn't so much corruption. Fine. But he would still be a very rich and successful man, as would many other people, men and women alike. You know, the woman who started Spanx and became a billionaire. She did it out of her apartment. She was broke. And so, but she worked her butt off, literally and ironically. So she developed something in her against all odds, all rejection, against the Goliath of the fashion industry or the apparel industry. This is the real story, not the headline, right? And so if you just focus on one side or the other, if you just say Elon's a genius or Elon's evil or the system is corrupt and evil or the system is great, you're still stuck in a polarity. If you collapse it to either one, on one side you become an apologist who can't see that it's rigged, and then you can't make a difference and a change. On the other side, you collapse it to, that it's rigged and all that, that it's rigged, and then you can't see the deeper principle, and you lose your own agency. You lose your own capacity to develop resources and resourcefulness that would allow you to actually make a difference. And the ultimate outcome of any of those is it costs you your future. And ultimately, it costs us our future. Now, I'm going to get to some questions in a minute and some comments, but I want to just layer one other thing underneath this. Because you are the source, you are the goose, but underneath that, to understand what the wealthiest, most successful people in any domain ultimately understand, whether innately or through intentional development, is that the real story underneath this, the real cause of abundance and success, is the law of circulation. And let me just briefly tell you about that. So start with a battery. Now, in a battery, you have a positive and a negative, right? Plus and a minus. And you might, if you didn't know better, if you were an alien, you'd be like, ooh, the negative is bad, right? But the positive isn't good and the negative isn't bad. They're just two polarities, two poles. If you connect only the positive, you get nothing, right? You don't get energy. There's no light, there's no power, there's no life there. You need to connect the positive and the negative. That creates a circuit. And then that allows energy to circulate. That creates a current. The current you see is the currency. That affluence means to flow. When the current flows, you have affluence, you have currency, you have abundance. The power doesn't come from just focusing on the positive or the negative alone. In fact, if you do that, you have a broken circuit. Everything alive runs on this. Your lungs breathe in, they take. You're so greedy, you're taking air. Somebody else could need that air. And then you breathe it out. You give. Oh, you're so selfless. Such a good person, right? Try only inhaling. You'll be dead in 2 minutes, right? Drowning in the very thing you've been hoarding, that air. Your heart takes blood in and it pushes blood out. The moment it takes more in than it gives, or the more it gives out more than it takes, heart attack. In nature, a system that receives more water than it releases becomes a flood. If it releases more than it receives, it becomes a drought. You get it? For any system to be healthy, it has to circulate. Now, if you look at Elon Musk, he took everything he made from PayPal and he put it all into SpaceX or Tesla or whatever. Think of it as SpaceX mostly. Every rocket blew up. He almost lost everything. But he just kept circulating. And if you look at, again, that's the meaning behind that Bible story of the talents. You want to know what the Great Depression was? It was not because of corrupt people only. It wasn't because of all the partying that went on in the Roaring 20s merely. It was not a lack of wealth at all. The factories were still there. The land was still fertile. The skills were still inside people's hands. What collapsed was circulation. People got scared. People got angry. They started hoarding. They stopped spending and investing and producing and creating and giving. And the whole body of the economy had a collective heart attack. The blood was all there. It was just pooling, stagnant, and no longer moving. Get it? And I'm telling you, if you read the headlines and you tell a story that cuts you off from any one of those polarities, the same will happen to you. And it is happening. In those areas, your life is stagnant. This is the master key to the whole left-right debate, politically. First of all, it's ridiculous. You need a left and a right wing to fly, right? It's like, imagine, evolutionarily, if the bird was like, the left won and the bird's just got a left wing and you're dead. The right wins, there's just a right wing and you're dead. When you really start to step back from these stories, you're like, how silly. Why is the left and the right wing fighting each other? That's insane. That is literally insane. And why am I picking a team? I'm part of the insanity. Why am I pro left wing and not right wing and pro right wing and not? It doesn't work. That's like saying I'm pro left brain and let's cut this right brain out, this hemisphere. Or I'm pro right brain, let's cut out the left brain. You need both to function. Would you agree? Right? Or masculine and feminine. It's like, me too, it's just for the women. Well, okay, yes, they need to speak up, no doubt. But what about me too? It's like Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. You see, it's all a trap. Yes, of course, Black Lives Matter. And yes, of course, all lives matter. Yes, me too. And yes, you too. And yes, all of us. It's all a trap. That doesn't mean there's not a moment to take a stand for female rights or men's rights or people of color or this, that, or the other. All of that has a moment. But if you don't reconnect the circuit, you have a broken circuit and you have conflict. And you go backwards, not forwards. You have lack, limitation, separation, polarization, and ultimately blood in the streets. And more people lose. You understand? It's called the Tao, the yin and the yang, right? There's a reason Lao Tzu was onto something. And too much of our history and our headlines are designed to keep us in a battle, because if you're divided, you can be conquered. If you're all for the left can control you. And so can the right, by the way, by making you pissed off, and vice versa. If you're all for men or all for women, you're controlled. You lose agency. It doesn't mean you can't have moments and focus. You go to the gym, you just work on your upper body or just your arms, fine. But you don't just do that. Right? You ever see men that only work on their upper body and they have little pencil legs, or just on their front but not on their back, and they're all messed up? You need both sides. And the stories and the headlines would be boring and you wouldn't pay attention, because your evolutionary system, your animal, your what's the name of that part of the brain? Your limbic system and your lizard brain, it's not going to click if it says everybody's right. Maybe sometimes it's kind of boring. It doesn't trigger your survival instincts, your evolutionary instincts, right? So the algorithms and the media, it's designed to, it's not like it's a bad person doing it. It's what Buddha talked about. It's the craving and aversion, and it keeps hooking us with headlines. Right? Right after Elon became a trillionaire, right away, people are like, we got to take all the money away from billionaires. It's like, okay. And then, by the way, just a quick stat, if you took all the money from all the billionaires in the world and the one trillionaire, just in America alone, you wouldn't even be able to pay all the debt for more than a couple of years. And then you'd be right back in the same position, only worse, because you would have killed a lot of gooses that are producing some eggs. It doesn't work. But if you're stuck at the headline, you're part of the problem. If you don't agree with me, go ahead and post. I'll get to those. But I just want you to get the point. I'm not saying one side is right and one side is wrong. I'm saying taking sides is wrong. Taking sides is not constructive. It's not helping. And the media and the algorithms, and increasingly so, are going to be designed to get you to take sides. And we will all pay in our blood and treasure as a result. You understand? So you can break it at the top, right? In either case, if you, it's all about the elites and the pro whatever, and that's going to break the circuit. Everything will pool at the top, and it won't flow down. When a tiny few are hoarding all the blood in the system and rigging the rules, that's a heart attack. But you can also break it at the source when a system trying to fix the problem, and maybe even sincerely, seizes the generative engine itself, seizes the means of production, that's socialism, and you flatten the tree to redistribute the fruit. That's what Mao did. That's what they did in Russia. You punish the capacity that produces the wealth. You kill the goose that lays the golden eggs and try to get all the gold back. But now you have a dead goose. That's also a broken circuit. And nothing will grow to circulate anymore. You'll never even have the beginning of circulation. That's what socialism does. That's why socialism, when it rises, it kills all the means of production and everybody starves. And then they start killing each other for having an extra piece of bread, right? So either side, and if it pools at the top, you also end up with war and injustices. And either way, it doesn't work. And I will say one little sidebar, that while it's true on one hand that entrepreneurial types are becoming the goose and are producing the abundance into the system that actually allows for the tax base and to pay for all the things, people don't realize that either. And that's an argument for entrepreneurialism, or an argument for you to become a producer and a creator and a generator, because the producers, creators, and generators are the ones that produce the stuff that everybody uses. But then you could argue, well, they also need people to work for them. And so you also need to understand you can't be a producer without workers. However, and this is important for you to understand, that is increasingly less true in the AI age. So what does that mean for you? It means if you're fighting for the rights of workers, yes, there still needs to be rights, don't get me wrong. You have to look at your own life and see where things are going and unfolding, and understand that one guy just built $1 billion company with himself and AI. And increasingly, what this is, the core of this topic today, is the real story behind the story is that you are the goose that lays the golden egg. Don't be jealous of Elon or anybody. Don't be mad at anybody. Become the goose. Be the change. Reclaim your power, your agency. Remember, you are the source, and become more resourceful. And this has never been more true, because as job freezes are happening, and as less beginning lower level work is being removed and replaced by AI and agents, there's one thing that the world can't replace, and that is you uniquely knowing who and what you are and what you stand for, having reclaimed your agency, being the cause, being the change, no longer wasting your energy on circle of concern, which we talked about, which is, why are they doing it? It's not fair. This isn't right. I'm not saying there's not a time to speak truth to power and go to the window and say, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. And to, not riot, but protest in the streets. There's time for all of that, but then get your butt back and become the goose. Become the person who's focused on your circle of influence, where you can actually create and produce the value that only you can. That's going to be the secret to future-proofing your life, work, wealth, and well-being in this age of disruption. So just take a breath. I know that's a lot. I want to look at some of these comments. And again, I'm not, just to be clear, I got to kind of, nowadays somebody can clip something and looks like I'm saying, protesting is wrong or you have no power. And that's not what I'm saying. You have to just remember, as we talked about, I think it was in the first episode, or maybe I recapped it in the second, You have a circle of influence and a circle of control. So I'll just recap it real briefly. Your circle of control I'm sorry, concern, not control. Your circle of concern is all the things you're concerned about, all the things that trigger you, make you sad, mad, upset, whatever. You can't do anything about it, but you're mad, upset, sad, you're doom scrolling, you're clicking, you're posting, but you can't do anything about it. You think you're doing something by clicking, posting, and protesting, but you're really not. You're just becoming the raw material for the machine. You are stuck in the matrix and it's living off of your limbic system. And you're drained and you don't have the energy left to go actually create something. Okay. And so that's a circle of concern. And when you do that, your circle of influence shrinks, it atrophies. You have less influence, less agency. You feel more powerless. Then there's your circle of influence. That's where you actually can make a difference. And it can be measured. And it can make a difference in your life, your loved ones, and potentially and eventually even in the world. But for most people, that circle of influence is small initially. And it stays small and it gets smaller. Like in that story from the Bible, to he who has, more shall be given. To he who has not, even what he has will be taken away. It atrophies and stays small because we are hijacked by the media, by the headlines, by our own conditioning to keep giving our power and energy away to our circle of concern. That's why there's the AA saying, and I don't remember exactly, but like, God grant me the wisdom to do the things that change the things I can change, and to let go of the things I can't, and to know the difference. Something like that. You guys can post the actual thing. It's like, grant me the wisdom to know what I actually can make a difference in and put my life's attention there, and to know where I can't make a difference right now and stop putting my attention there. 99% of all the BS on the internet, and maybe even a lot of stuff your boyfriends and girlfriends are gossiping about, it's absolutely useless. It's not helping, it's hurting, it's atrophying your real capacity. But the system has been developed to feed off of our attention, really like the Matrix. And you have to take it back and start to intentionally put your attention only where you have real influence. Now, what does this look like in a simple, practical way? Well, I don't have time to work out, so, go to the gym. And so, I'm going to instead just scroll for the 10 minutes I do have, or I'm going to gossip for the 10 minutes I have, or I'm going to go eat some Ben and Jerry's for the 10 minutes I do have. That circle of concern. That's putting your attention in a place where you're apathetic, where you don't have any power, instead of going, but what can I do right now towards the thing I want, getting in better health or fitness. I could sit right here right now and do 50 sit-ups or 10 and 3 push-ups and spend the next 5 minutes walking in place, running in place. I just took 10 minutes that I could have wasted, that would have atrophied my body and my influence more. Or I could take that 10 minutes and your mind will go, but what good is that going to do? 10 minutes or even 5 minutes. Nothing's going to happen. That's the trap, right? What can I do? I don't have any power. It's like the kid, on the beach, and there's all these starfishes washed ashore, and he's picking them up one by one and throwing them back in the ocean. And this businessman comes along and is like, kid, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. You can't make any difference here. It's a terrible accent. Don't know where it's from. And the kid picks up one starfish and goes, it made a difference to that one. That's circle of influence. Even if it's one push-up, even if you can write 10 words in that few minutes or 100 words of your new book, or you can send, instead of posting and trolling and wasting your energy and feeding the machine of the algorithm, you spend that 10 minutes and you sincerely make a list of what you're grateful for, or the people you're grateful for. And maybe out of that, you even write one little love note or note of gratitude to somebody. And you're like, well, what is that going to do to pay my rent? That won't pay your rent today, but Every place you begin to open out away from whence to release this imprisoned splendor, as the poet Robert Browning said, to recognize whatever's missing is what I'm not giving, what I'm not circulating, what I'm not creating, what I'm not generating. And you begin to find those places where you can start circulating, generating, creating, being of service, becoming more you, investing in yourself, filling yourself up, and then expressing and sharing and circulating that, even if it's a little drip. If you understand the law of compounding, hold on a second. If you understand the law of compounding, one drop of water in a giant stadium, I forget the particular mathematical equation. It's like one drop, just drip, drip, drip. And if that drop doubles every second or whatever, it's like, how long would it take to fill the stadium? And it's like a crazy short time. And the whole stadium's full of water. The law of compounding. So if you focus on your circle of influence a little bit every day, and then you increasingly design a life so that almost all you're doing is focusing. Like people say, how's your day going? I say, I don't know, don't care. But I know how I'm going about my day. How's life treating you, Derek? Don't know, don't care. But I know how I'm treating me, and I know how I'm treating my life. I'm living in and from my circle of influence. And that's why I created this show here, is because there's so much media everywhere. And if it's not coming from our screen, it's coming from our neighbor or our loved one or somebody, and we're bombarded. And it pulls away our energy and attention into our circle of concern. But but there is also a value. The news is a prayer request. The news is an invitation to adventure, but only if you know how to read it. And you go, this pisses me off, this whatever, and we'll get to that in a second. Whatever it does to you, but then, and now you're on your circle of concern, but you ask, what's trying to be revealed? What's trying to emerge in me? And now you begin to get your attention on your circle of influence. Where can I make a difference? First in my own life, in the life of my loved ones, clients, whatever, and then eventually I grow the capacity. One great example, Nelson Mandela, I talk about him all the time, 27 years in prison, unjustly, in the middle of apartheid. It was completely unjust. Apartheid was real, it was evil. And yet, here's what makes Nelson Mandela a man we remember. He refused to focus on the injustice merely. He refused to let injustice become his story. In that cell, he dug deeper, and he became, in his own words, based on a poem, Invictus, the captain of his soul and the master of his fate. He generated from within himself a kind of power and wealth and resourcefulness that no jailer could touch, no torturer could torture out of him. Right? It wasn't money in the typical sense. It wasn't even power in the typical sense. It was profound agency and capacity and consciousness. And he walked out of that jail and ended the very thing that imprisoned him. Now, here's the part that we need to be haunted by. Other men walked out of that same prison, still prisoners. Same cells, same injustice, completely different outcome. We can't control the outcomes, but we can control the inputs and the outputs. Mandela took control of his circle of influence, his inputs and his outputs, and it transformed not only his outcome, it ended apartheid. He became president. He put on forgiveness tribunals. The difference was he reading and reacting at the headline level, or was he going behind the scene? So now look at yourself and look at this particular headline, or maybe there's another one that angers you. Watching the Trillionaire headline, the rich getting richer leaves you mad or makes you feel small or stuck. Pay attention, because if you buy into that story, you are buying into a belief of haves and have-nots, of lack and limitation and separation, and you cannot make a demand on life that exceeds your story about it. You cannot make a demand on life that exceeds your story about it. You cannot have a prayer answered if the prayer exceeds your story. If you believe wealth corrupts or is corrupt, or wealthy people or rich people are evil or bad or mean or selfish or corrupt, or that money is dirty or wrong or unspiritual or anything like that, you've just disqualified yourself from being able to generate it at least abundantly. If you think success is dangerous or scary or who cares, we don't need it, or whatever, you've just disqualified yourself. You can't, and then you're like, why am I not making more money? Why am I not successful? Why is this not working? Look at your story and then the beliefs, and look at how you react to the headlines. The headlines are telling you, your reaction to them is telling you what your story is. And then you will cut yourself off and have a broken circuit. You won't express that part of you, right? You'll double down on another part of you thinking that's good. I'm being more good, more selfless, more kind, more loving. I'm a good person. I'm a spiritual person. Why isn't this working? While you've cut yourself off from being selfish, which just means taking care of the self, feeding the need of the seed, and you're stagnant and you're stuck and there's a drought and you're not able to circulate what you need. And you're like, I don't understand. Hopefully by now you do. So I want to actually, so in this trigger, in these triggers, there's a messenger. And I want to just take a few minutes to give you a chance to see what's underneath the trigger, if any. I want to just take a quick look here at the, what's this going here? We're having trouble. Okay, hold on a sec. Sorry, guys, some technical thing inside here. I just want to look and see. Yes. And yeah, in Hintibra, it's not just I have been blessed with material abundance. That's a story. But you want to identify where you're telling a story that isn't that. Where you're triggered by the injustices or by the elite systems or whatever the case might be. It's not just putting an affirmation on top of our limited story. This is why affirmations rarely work, right? It's like, I'm abundant, I'm abundant, I'm abundant. And then, you know, you're mad about Elon or you're mad about Jeff Bezos or you're mad, whatever the case is, right? And that's like putting ice cream on top of poop. And you have a poop sundae and it looks pretty for a minute until the ice cream melts. I know that was gross, but you probably aren't going to forget that example. Okay, so I'll get to the questions. I want to give you an opportunity to experience a little bit of this, what I call this segment, trigger happy. So, you know, this is something you're not going to get on a typical news show or even in church or a lot of places. We don't look at the underlying triggers and take responsibility for them, right? We project them out onto the screen of our experience. I think most of you here probably know what a shadow is, but I'll just say in brief, a shadow, basically when you're born, you have two piles that you're building. One is the pile called who I am, and one is the pile of I'm not. And so the I am gets things, maybe, you know, you're trying to get parts like good, loving and or safe and approved and worthy. And the other part is I'm not. You know, these are the things that got you shamed, got you punished, got you scared. And they can be different qualities, you know, needy, greedy, selfish, selfless, good, kind, nice, bad, mean. These are all qualities that get put into these two different piles: strong, weak, creative, uncreative. But nothing gets deleted. That's key. Energy is neither created or destroyed. So you can't delete a part of yourself. You just bury it. You push it down into the dark, and that becomes a shadow. And it's not evil, although if you look at the word evil, it's live spelled backwards, right? And so it's just living in opposition to principle, to life. But these are disowned parts of you, and whatever you bury, you project out into the world, and you can't stand to see it in anybody else. It sounds like he's so selfish. He's a greedy, power hungry SOB, such and such. He's so arrogant. She thinks she's all that. She's so selfish. She's so needy. And it feels true. And you can even get a whole crowd to agree about it. That's what Facebook is about, or X, maybe even more so, right? Let's get a bunch of people to agree about my shadow. Trump is the king. Trump is evil. Elon is the king. Elon is evil. He's selfish. He's a pervert. He's this, he's that. And then it aggregates a crowd around your shadow. People who share that shadow, that trigger. Now, that trigger is a shadow, which is a judgment, and the intensity level of it is not measuring that person you're judging. It's measuring how deeply you've buried it, or rather, how much it's trying to come to the surface, or how important or meaningful that quality really is to reclaim. So let's just look at selfish, and everybody wants to be the good one, or at least some people, and the selfless one. But again, think about the battery analogy. If you have selfish and selfless, that's the positive, or negative and positive polarities, or positive is selfless, negative is selfish. Selfish, though, just means making your true self a priority, making yourself a priority. And selfless means making someone else, another self, a priority. You need both. Right? The first two commandments, love God with all your heart and soul, which is really love the divine self within you. Second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. That's the master polarity. That's the way of sacred union, an infinity symbol. That's the Tao. And so you need both, right? You can't just be selfless. Then you can't receive. Then you can't put yourself first. You step over your own needs, believing someday you'll get it. And when is that day coming? How's that working for you? Right? It's a broken circuit. You can't give and give and give, or you burn out and you resent it because you have a broken circuit and you never able to create the golden eggs, right? You give from your roots instead of your fruits, and you end up not rooted enough to produce much or any fruits. You get it? So there, whatever the qualities are, you have them all. You are a needy, greedy, selfish son of a bitch. Okay. But that's not a bad thing, as you will eventually see. And some of you have done this work. If you do the work of integrating those parts of you, they're just polarities that got a bad name. Okay. But they're all parts of you. And when they're integrated, you're not triggered by the world. You're inspired by it. You have compassion for those stuck in their own shadows and triggers, because you have become no longer a house divided, but have become whole inside. So let's just take a moment, just for a second, because we're running out of time soon. But I want to give you a chance to just notice. You've already shared a lot of stuff in here, but just again, if you're still with me, just finish this sentence in the chat. Rich people, and be honest, be raw, don't be spiritual, don't be wise. Tell the truth of how it reacts in your body. Rich people are, fill in the blank. Or billionaires are, or trillionaires are, fill in the blank. Or Elon is, here, I'm going to put some of these things in the chat here. Just for those. Be raw, be real. I just posted that prompt in the chat. Go ahead and answer those prompts. And I might have put it in there more than it went in there a few times for some reason. Let's see. While you're posting, I'm going to look through some of these questions. So if you're playing along, You're just coming up with some trigger, something about this that triggers you. You could say, you know, capitalism is, if you have a trigger there, or even socialism is, if you're pro entrepreneurs and capitalists. Find in this story what triggers you. And it could very well be something I've said that you have a story or a opinion about. And you could say, you know, whatever that is. Or it could even be if you're new to this community and you're like, triggered by me. Derek is. Derek is an idiot. Derek is crazy. Derek doesn't know what the F he's talking about. Okay, so what kind of a person talks but doesn't really know what they're talking about? An ignoramus, arrogant, whatever, a know-it-all. So just find that trigger in there. It could, again, it could be any dimension of it. Technology is, you know, AI is, rich, the oligarchs are, the billionaire class is, the elites are, and you're looking for where it triggers you. Liberals are, whatever is the trigger. And then what I want to invite you to do, you can write that down if you haven't posted it yet, but try to post it so that others can see and also potentially have some insight. But what I want you to do is look at that judgment, like needy, greedy, selfish, jerks, controllers, corrupt. And we're not going to go through the whole shadow process here. By the way, for those that are new to this, if you want to get a simple, guided, for free shadow process that you can take that judgment and walk through it yourself, I guide you through it. You can go to Derek Rydall, DerekRydall.com. Here, I'll just put that here. And then go to the free training page at the bottom. You'll see a free shadow guided meditation, and you'll take that judgment and I will guide you through really beginning to unpack what is trying to emerge in your life. This is a relationship within you you're being asked to reconnect to re-embrace. And if that doesn't make any sense at all, it will start to make a lot of sense as you go through this process, or stick around in this community. And you know, by the way, also on YouTube, there's tons of free videos, free trainings, including on different aspects of awakened wealth, of shadow work, etc. So check that out. Please like and subscribe so we can help the algorithm, you know, find out about this and more people can see it. If you resonate and believe that this would help people, you can also go to my podcast, Emergence, and tons of free trainings there as well. But as you're feeling into this, without going through all the questions and steps in the shadow work, just ask, this is activating a part of your nervous system like this, feel the judgment. And now in that raw, vulnerable place, ask, where in my life is there a part of me that wants more? That wants to receive more? That wants to be first? That even wants to be number one? For example, I remember once working with a client and she was very judgmental about, you know, the big, most successful people in the world kind of thing. And when I went deeper, it's like, you know, these people like, you know, that take all the attention, suck it out of the system, you know, oh, how dare they? They're so arrogant. They just want to be number one. They just want everybody to look at them. And what I got down to and understood ultimately was she was in a marriage where her husband was ignoring her and had been for a long time. And it had gotten covered up by layers of, you know, dust and grit of the journey. But she wanted to be number one. She wanted to be put on a pedestal. She wanted to be seen, but she couldn't really admit that anymore. And in fact, it had gotten twisted. We all want to be a star to somebody, right? To our partner, to our kids. We all want to matter. And sometimes when we see people that matter too much, it's really a trigger that's telling us, I want to matter more. But you won't be able to really meet that part of you if you make it about them. And so that's one thing. So, or we want more, that's the Cain and Abel story. Cain kills Abel because Abel gets more blessings from God. His sacrifices are more beloved. So let me just kill him. Now I'll be the one. Didn't work out too well. So where in your life is there a part of you that wants more, that wants to receive, that wants to be first, that wants to take up some space? Maybe you don't want to go to space like Elon, but you want to be able to take up more space. For Elon, it's space, the final frontier after there. For you, it's like just having a little space here is my frontier. Raise my voice, take up more space. But maybe you've judged it. You feel shame about it. You feel like it's wrong if you're like a parent and you have children, especially if you're a woman, because evolutionarily, women have been conditioned and needed to make other people, their child especially, more important than them. And that was a beautiful evolutionary thing, but it's just one side of it. Because if you don't take care of yourself and take up space and fill yourself up, eventually you're not able to care for others. So it's you have to complete the circuit. Where do you need to be selfish? Where do you need to take up more space? Where do you need to be willing to have others think that you're arrogant or pushy or ambitious? Just notice. And as you feel into that, ask that part of you that's maybe stirring, even the judgmental part of you, what it needs. Like feel that feeling and say, what do you need from me? So that you can become an integrated and constructive part of my life. What do you need me to start doing or stop doing? Start focusing on or stop focusing on? Or another way to put it, what do I need to stop apologizing for wanting? Where do I need to let myself be seen more? Or to dare to step up, step out, speak out, and be seen and heard? Just take a moment. I know I'm just trying to give you can rewatch this, but I want you to get a sense of what's possible here. I want you to notice some things are stirring and moving. And again, you can rewatch the replay if this is going too fast, and I encourage you to. But I want you also to find the cost, because it seems like it has a payoff to judge, to blame, to pick a team, to make somebody wrong like Elon or whoever, or just ignore it. But if you can find out the cost of staying the same, you're going to be much more likely to change for the better. So ask, where is that broken circuit costing me right now? And listen to what bubbles up. Notice. What's it costing me in my income, in my asking? Even Jesus said, ask and you'll receive. Knock and the door will open. Seek and you will find. Pretty ambitious of him. So what is it costing me, this broken circuit, in my income, in my asking, in my visibility? In the simplest area, like my willingness to charge for what I do or charge what I'm worth. Take a breath. And just take a moment to jot down whatever came up and maybe post and share a little bit. And understand that every judgment, every trigger is a door. It's an opening into more of you. That's why you want to become trigger happy, right? It's something that's been locked away, and the world and the headlines are trying to show you more of you that's trying to emerge. When you turn it inward, go behind the scene, feel into the triggers, recognize this is telling you about your story, and then go beneath that and see what is trying to emerge in me now by means of this headline, this challenge, this trigger. And what's trying to happen in your life, wherever those things are, is there's a bigger life, a bigger story, a better and a truer story that's trying to emerge. And the chronic places are telling you you've been living in a story that's too small for you now, maybe always was. And when you look out at the headlines and what's trying to happen on the planet is we're living in a story, in a container, in a box that's too small, that's no longer serving us. And it's cracking and it's breaking. But when the form that held our life shatters, it's not lost, it is liberated. That's the real message behind this. Make sense? We don't want to burn it down. We don't want to take sides. We want to read between the lines and behind the headlines and behind the scene. And we want to become more interested in that circle of influence. What's really trying to be revealed? What's really being unveiled? What was hidden that's being revealed now that I can use to become more myself, to live my life, my purpose, my potential more fully? So that first of all, I can be happy and free and fulfilled and abundant. And now I have fruits to give to the world. Now I can make a difference. Healer, heal thyself first. Yes, remember, life is not happening to you. It's happening through you and as you. And so whatever's going on in your life or in the world that's triggering you, ask, what is trying to happen through me by means of this situation? And who would I be if I let it on the other side? And then begin to design your life not as a reaction to the world, but as the new container that is designed to hold and shape and support the larger you and the larger story that's trying to emerge. Remember, the world is not falling apart, it's being revealed so that it can be reborn and so that you can too. And I hope this has served you. And I want to take us a little bit of time to look at some of the questions and respond to those. And if there's any pushback, feedback that you have, also including what else you would like me to bring to this channel, to this show, I would love to hear. What do you like about this? What don't you like about it? How can I provide more value and a greater experience so that this becomes must-see TV? You want to come back and check it out on a regular basis. And what could I provide and what would it need to be so you'd want to tell friends? Let me know. This is not designed merely for me to please myself. It pleases me most to know that I'm making a difference to you, that I'm really serving you. So share in the chat. We did a few episodes ago, but I lost that chat for some reason. I'm still figuring out some of the technical stuff. But post in the chat what you like about this, if you've been watching, even just today, what you don't like about it. Be honest, be real, be raw. Don't just be nice. Be constructive if you can, but be honest. And what would you like to see differently or more of? Or just what do you have as feedback or pushback or your burning questions? Because again, this is about building community, and I really want to know where you're at, and we want to source all of the knowledge and wisdom in this community to make us all smarter and better versions of ourselves. So, okay, I'm going to look at some of these now. Let's see. So Lolita, how does circulation cut off by design one half of the circuit by, say, the Supreme Court play into all of this? Oh, let me put that on the screen. Actually, I can show that. Okay. Be our own battery. So are you, okay. So there's ways in which circulation gets cut off systemically, right? Obviously, if you make a person a slave, you are systemically cutting off circulation. If the Supreme Court makes a ruling, it's creating systemic changes in the system. If the city shuts off your water, the city shut off the circulation of water to your house. So it's not denying that there are external things that break the circuits. What we want to understand is that the world is just the collective expression of a story, which is made up of beliefs. And obviously, different parts of the world have different stories, but they all form together in a grand story. And so all of the stuff, what the Supreme Court's doing, what they're doing, these are all the outpicturing of individuals and communities and cultures and collective story and beliefs of what we value and what we don't. And so, and then what happens is, again, if you get stuck in that, the story, which is just the projection, which is just the previous thinking and story now made manifest, you will just perpetuate that story, whether by agreeing with it or just by fighting it. But understanding that this is why the pen is mightier than the sword. The power you have is if you use whatever it triggers in you. Now, it can be a trigger in two ways. It can be a trigger that tells you more about who you need to be in your own life, and that's more than enough to allow you to become freer in your own life and more creative, productive, and abundant. And then at some point, it can become a thing that helps you discover what your life code is, which is your deeper purpose, right? And then you might become a stand for a new story. This is what happens when this is what Mandela did coming out of prison. This is what Gandhi did. This is what Dr. King did. And then you begin to share that story. Notice Dr. King didn't go around merely telling a story about how terrible and corrupt and bad the world is and racism is. He said, I had a dream. I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. Now, yeah, he certainly spoke truth to power, but he was also telling a new story, telling a story in such a way that wasn't merely a reaction and a trigger, but he had transmuted that trigger into a powerful myth and story. Myth meaning true. Myths are actually truer than reality. And that story galvanized others. It pulled others away from the old story, and they began to agree with this new emerging story. And as a result of that, a small group of people changed the course of history. And this is always the case. And that's why it says in the Bible, 10 righteous men can save a city. It could also be 10 righteous women. They had a very old story back then about men and women. The new story would say 10 righteous women. So the power even of this community, if you change your story, you change the world. Now, at first, it might be your world and your children's world. But eventually, depending on your dharma, your purpose, it can evolve. And now when you speak your story, when you share it as a song, as a book, as a workshop, as a talk, as the leader of a protest or whatever, it's a meaning it's for. That's why Mother Teresa said, I'll never go to an anti-war rally, but I'll go to any peace rally. Because she's focused on her circle of influence, not her circle of concern. And that's why her influence grew. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter what the president's doing, what the Supreme Court's doing. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but it's not, you have to find the level of real influence you have about that story. And for most people, it starts by just reclaiming their agency at home and then in their office. And then little by little, they develop enough agency where they can actually speak truth to power and power listens. I hope that makes sense. Miss Janetti. My problem with the ultra rich is when their wealth is gained by exploiting others, not paying or treating their workers, the stakeholders, fairly in favor of the shareholders who gain more wealth. Absolutely, that's what I said. There's no doubt that the system is tilted. And so the question is, first of all, there's a lot more to break down about that, is that we have to understand the kind of economy we live in, and at least in the West. And it's basically that people pay for what they value. And if you want to make money in this economy, you have to discover, what do I have a value that someone else values and will pay for? And as a result of that, now you can have stakeholders that value it, and that's one way to get support. And you can also have customers, clients, et cetera. And even from a worker standpoint, people love to work for Elon because they value what he's bringing, his vision, et cetera, et cetera. And I think he probably even pays people pretty well. So what's the place of empowerment, rather than it's not fair, it's unjust? Let me first understand the game. It's like when Oprah was being sued by the cattle ranchers for having slandered beef, and she was losing. And she called in a court expert who turned out to be Dr. Phil. That was how she met Dr. Phil. And he found her in her hotel room crying in her pajamas. And he's like sitting on the floor. He's like, girl, he made some Dr. Philism, you're like an alligator who's something, and he's like, you need to get up off your butt and you need to get in the game they're playing. Doesn't mean you have to become somebody different, but you have to know the game they're playing, or you will get your butt kicked down the field, so to speak. So, what was it? Norma Ray, or again, any of these people, Gandhi, Dr. King, Norma Ray, Mandela, they understood the game and they played it from a higher or deeper place of greater power. And they ultimately played it better. And so they won, and they won it on the behalf of others. Norma Ray, I think she was somebody that helped to bring to get women's rights or union rights or something like that. So she was fighting for workers. Sally Fields won the Academy Award, great movie. So we want to take the problem, again, right now, this is not about, I'll add some of my perspective, but this isn't so much about me telling you why it's wrong or right that workers don't get treated fairly, because there's lots of channels about that. And again, sometimes I'll share my point of view. The point is, what does that do to you? What does that make you think and feel? What is the judgments you have? What is the story you're telling? Are you telling a story, those poor workers? Because if you're telling that story, even if there's some facts where in some cases they are, if you have a town with one company, those workers have there's no competition for labor. And so those workers are screwed. That's truly an unfair monopoly in that town for labor. But if you tell a story, and in the story, there's a victim and there's a victimizer, it doesn't mean that there's not some victimizing going on, but it means you're living in a world in your consciousness where you are feeling like the victimizer, where you are believing in like the victim. And the problem, even if you can point to the facts, is you're in a story with a victim and a victimizer, and no matter what you do about it, and you'll just end up with a different victim and victimizer. And in many cases, ironically, you become the victimizer. And so, or you just become more of a victim without going into details. There's many stories and examples of this. So it's about, what's the story I'm telling? It's like to take this another way, the Black Lives Matter movement. If you look at that movement, it had some initial good things, it was like anti-cop violence and racist cops and all these different things. And we needed to clean up the system, and we still do. There's lots of injustice and racism and stuff systemically there. But what it did was it just created more polarity, and it launched this whole story of white people are bad again, and all this stuff. And those poor Black people that have been, it's like the movie Get Out. It should have been a satire, but we took it seriously. And it told a disempowering story about people of color, about Black people. And then you have to ask, well, if you're a young Black kid growing up and you're hearing about how bad white people are and how much oppressive they are, is that going to inspire and empower you inside of that story to become great? Of course not. It's going to make you angry, sad, mad, apathetic, whatever. So it's a bad story. It's not helpful. It was just more of the same old story that we thought Dr. King had already helped us get over. Now, some of you might be listening going, how dare you? How could you say that? And then share your comments. So we have to notice, what's the story we're living in? And if we're buying into that very popular story of victim, victimizer, again, doesn't mean there's not bad people doing bad things to other people. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't try to stop the bad and the harm from happening. It doesn't mean we shouldn't seek to create better rights for laborers and workers and disenfranchised people and all of that. I want you to not hear that I'm creating another polarity. It means, what's the story you're coming from? And if your story still contains good and bad, victimizer and victim, you're part of the problem. This is why Gandhi said, I think it was to a British captain or something, I can't remember the details. He said something like, my fight is not with you, but with the idea. And he says something like, love the sinner, hate the sin. It's the idea that is not helpful. It's not the person you attack. It's the idea. It's the thesis. It's the hypothesis. It's the belief of the story. Because as long as you buy into the idea of good and evil and us versus them, you are still going to get the fruit of the poisonous tree. And we have to strike the axe at the root of that story. First, by living it ourselves. This is why Gandhi had power. This is why Mandela had power. This is why Dr. King had more power than a Malcolm X until Malcolm had his shift, because they were not living in that same story. And so they had more power even than the elites in that story. I hope this makes sense. Again, keep pushing back if that doesn't. Let me just look and see a few others of this. Robert's saying, I wish we could speak to one another. Well, for YouTube, you can text with you can share in the chat. This is one venue. This is a way to expand the community and build the community. Obviously, come on over to my site, sign up for stuff, show up for free calls. I'm going to be doing a free live call on Zoom next week. So anybody that's not a part of my community, and of course, anybody that is, pay it. If you're not in my community, sign up for something free on my website so you get an email about the free call coming up, so you can get on and we can talk for real, not just message. If that's, this serves a different purpose. Let's see. Let me turn that thing off. So this question, jealousy will eat you alive, be happy for people, we're all one. Absolutely. And we don't want to do a spiritual bypass. We don't want to just go, don't worry, be happy. If you're feeling jealous, jealousy, envy is a signal of a light shadow. It's like, he's so rich, it's not fair, or she's so beautiful, or they're so talented. I hope they fail. What it's showing you actually is a projection of a quality that is in you that you've denied or been convinced it's not possible. And so you don't want to just be happy. You want to reclaim that part. You understand? It's real work. It's not just, I feel jealous, let me just cover that poop over with ice cream and whipped cream. No, I'm freaking jealous. Great. Now we have something to work with. That jealousy is a quality of your own power or genius. I remember once I saw this singer, piano player, and he was so amazing, hitting these notes, and I was like jealous. And then I remembered this principle and I caught it, and I began to reclaim my talented self, my singer, my musician. And within a couple months, I was singing and playing like that. And it was like a quantum leap. So don't just say nice things. Don't be nice. Don't do affirmations merely. If you have a trigger, deal with it. You guys understand? Okay. I hear you, Lolita. It feels very suffocating, feels like being trapped, super costly, exhausting. You're right on the verge of a breakthrough, Lolita. Stay with this process. The more intense it feels, the more potential is trying to be revealed. Okay. Thanks, Lee. Thanks to Trillion. Um, that's good. Let's see. Yeah. So Hantibra saying is not wanting what others have, wishing them well. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Suppressing jealousy. Exactly. You don't want to do that. You eventually want to get on the other side. Once, because of how I've embraced a lot of these parts, I want people to succeed. I want my friends to be more successful and richer than me. But I had to embrace those parts that didn't want that, because I was jealous, because I was rejecting those parts of myself. And I've become very successful and wealthy by a lot of standards, but not, but I'm not jealous or in competition with other people, right? Because in fact, much of my success has been as I've embraced a lot of these things that I was triggered by. So you don't want to cover it up. That's the real work. Let me look down here further. We'll do a few more of these. Let's see, what time is it? 3. Yeah, I have a few minutes. Okay. What is this? Oops. What if the tables were flipped? Would we like people to attack our wealth? Right, exactly. That's another way to look at it. Thank you, user -NP5SL7KH4, whatever your name is. So this is Lee. Live in integrity, play in wholeheartedness, stop telling the old stories to find the truth beyond the paradigm of lies. Yes. Yeah. And again, these are all beautiful sayings, and we want to absolutely, you want to play and be positive and all that stuff. You just want to use the media, the news, the headlines in your own life and in the world that trigger you in any way. They make you jealous or they make you angry or whatever, because it's trying to be the mirror, as Shakespeare said the play is, held up to humanity, that we may see ourselves, see our own corruption, see our own lies, and not judge them, but heal them and integrate them. And then what happens on the other side of that is not as a spiritual bypass, but as I said before, the news is a prayer request. Now, when I see things going on, there's so much more space in me, again, as I said, to have love, compassion, empathy, forgiveness, and to know the deeper truth about what I'm seeing, so that I'm becoming a force of expanded awareness in the world to the extent that I can do that, rather than just being part of the problem. And that's what you can be too. And by the way, as you do that, even in your own life, as that saying in the Bible says, as I am lifted up, I draw all unto me. As you are lifted up in consciousness with a better story, a truer story, a story more aligned with life, and you are living in and from that, and you are beginning to generate from that, it changes the environment you're in. It lifts people up. It transforms people. And if you're in a relationship or a job that is not serving you, as you will outgrow it, like outgrowing a pot that's too small for you, and the universe will pull you out and plant you in a bigger one. All right. All right, everybody. Again, if there's anything else that you would like, just one last moment. If you haven't liked or subscribed, please do that now. Please go and watch some of the other videos. These show up in the live. We're going to start putting them over in the regular video, but watch some of the other videos, get the value there. That also helps the algorithm. And share this with a friend or a loved one or on your socials if you want more people to be able to read and see between the lines and behind the scene this way, because I do think that will help us together change the story and the narrative we're living in and living from. But I also, just in this last minute, just post anything else. What is it you love most about it, about this? What don't you like about it? What would you like to see more of, less of, or differently that would make you want to never miss an episode or make you want to share it with friends? And it doesn't have to even just be about this. This news from the real world is just one segment in this channel, my channel, the Derek Rydall Show or Legendary Life. Maybe there's other things you would really like to see here, other things that would make this become must-see TV, that make you want to have appointment viewing and show up and engage and share. Please just share any thoughts, advice, guidance you have, because again, I'm not creating this just as a vanity project. I'm creating this because I really want to more deeply support and serve you in becoming all that you're really made for and made of and meant to be, so that together we can go out and create a world that works for the highest good of all. Oh, thanks, Martisha. That's a new song. Yeah, Let the Love In. I'll play another one at the end here, sing our song that I just created as well. And these are me. I've written the lyrics, the melody, all that stuff, the genre, designed it all, and then I'm using AI to produce it. But I've also sang many of these songs, although in some cases AI is auto-tuning my voice so much that I'm not able to sing that well, but I will be eventually. Anybody else? Just checking. Actually, I think I'll end with a different song. All right, everybody. Great work. I love and appreciate you all for being here. Remember to live authentically, to love unconditionally, and to follow your destiny. We'll end with this other song.
Found what was buried in the ground of their chest. Now it's breaking out, shaking out, nothing fake.
This is about you.
The quake that's waking up the rest. This ain't a guest list, it's a soul shift, a coded gift. A field full of storm bearers learning how to lift. The veil on the tail, they were told since birth that their worth had to earn itself first. Now this is the reverse, this is a universe rehearsing its return through y'all. Some of you whisper visions like they're dangerous spells. Others yell their mission like a bell that fell from a cathedral ceiling. Cracked clean, revealing the raw steel meaning you've been sealing in your healing. Some of you coach, some write, some sing, some teach, some reach through the breach in a person's broken speech and pull their truth back into reach. Some of you build fashion lines, AI tools, new schools, new rules. Sound temples with base that baptize as fools into remembering that jewels. Others awaken the forgotten, rebuild what was rotten, rekindle the begotten, and remind them they were never once misgotten. This is not common, this is cosmic, this is tectonic, this is a harmonic convergence disguised as a common thread. But listen, every vision came with a shadow twin, confidence thin, nerves wearing skin, plans made then unmade again, frozen throat, shaky note, not enough time, too much hope you rode. I can't start, I lose heart, I fall apart, I fear the part of me that's ready to depart. The old roles I still guard, but here's the bar, every scar in this group is a door, and every fear you swore you'd ignore is the exact thing you were born to explore. This is the uproar before the encore, yeah. When you spoke your vision here, it wasn't a post, it was a pulse of both through the collective skull, reminding every soul they're whole, holy and fully capable of taking back what was stolen. Yeah, I said it boldly, your vision's on goals, the rose in a storyline that's unfolding slowly, where every one of you is the only one who can hold the thing you hold. That's why I feel so heavy, that's why I feel so scary. Gold does fire fire does, truth does, becoming does. Look, each dream in this room is a brick in the bridge. From the life you survived to the life you now live. Yeah. You're not starting a program, you're starting a movement. Human improvement, soul attunement. Shadow to sunlight, truth and recruitment. You're not finding clients, you're finding alignment. When you shine,
Take care. See you soon. Much love.